We had a YOLO moment. You only live once. Let's pull the trigger. Let's do this.
Talk about what it was like to travel to Alaska.
There are two ways to go up to Alaska. I've seen roads in Indiana a lot worse than the Alaska highway. Just fill up whenever it's like half a tank and you'll be fine. We lost a few screws here and there. It's an RV. It's going to happen. The way I describe it to myself, there are 3 Alaskas. That was quite an experience, besides the mosquitoes. We had one mishap, a rookie mistake. I mean, you have to have the $90 pizza.
In this episode of RVing with Joe and Kait, we're going to be talking to Robert Morales from the YouTube channel Traveling Robert, all about what his experience was like traveling to and through Alaska. Let's get right into it. Robert, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe and Kait. We're the Russos. We've known each other for a while, and it's great to be on your podcast. Congratulations on the podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a new endeavor for us, and we figured now was the time.
It's nice to finally pull the trigger and start our own podcast. So
Yeah.
Thank you for being on ours.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get into RVing? Where are you from? That sort of thing.
Well, I was born in the island of Cuba. Being here for actually 2 days ago was my 35th anniversary of arriving to the United States. So it's
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, that's almost like an immigrant almost celebrates that more than their birthday. It's like a rebirth. So very happy to be here. And now about RVing, we started RVing about 9 years ago. Well, before we rented a couple of times, before just to make sure that we knew we liked it. It all began actually with my brother-in-law. We were visiting family in Georgia for Thanksgiving, and he rented one of those Cruise Americas, with the picture of Zion on the side. Unmistakable. And I'm like, they had a dog, and it was like very comfortable to travel. They could pull off anywhere, and I'm like, there must be something into this. And then we rented one twice actually, and after we rented the second one, we did the Four Corners out west, the national parks in Utah, the area. And I'm like, we have to do this, especially that area is made for RVing. We just we decided on something that I could kind of pull with my current vehicle that kind of fit in my driveway, kind of being the key word here. So we went to the dealer, just to see it. And the rest is history, we had a YOLO moment, you only live once, let's pull the trigger, let's do this.
So you started with a truck and trailer or towing a vehicle. And
Yeah.
What do you have currently?
I still have a truck and trailer. I started with I have an old Kia Sorrento, it was like the beefier of the Kia Sorrentos, but still, it was underpowered. But we're like, you know what? We're in Florida, it's all flat. What could possibly go wrong, Eventually we hit some mountains, and that's when it got sketchy. Eventually had to upgrade that Kia, and then after 5 years towing with my original trailer, I had been talking to Winnebago here and there, and we got to an agreement where I became a brand ambassador for them. And as part of that agreement, they lend me a trailer every year or every certain amount of time, it depends. And that's what I have now. I still have a Winnebago. It's a micro mini, but it's slightly. I went to a larger one, and I downsized again to a 20-footer.
The reason we wanted to have you on the podcast today is to talk about what it was like to travel to Alaska, because that is a bucket list item for a lot of RVers. It is the only state that we have not yet RV'd in, and we're a little timid about going up there. I mean, there's all the stories about blowing tires, the distance to get up there, all of the other things. And part of us is just like, why don't we just fly up, leave the RV at home, that sort of thing. So we'd love to get your kind of perception on what it was like to travel up there.
Yeah, well, it is certainly far. I can vouch for that. But, and you can fly. They have several companies that rent you a Class C up there, and... The thing with the rentals, they don't let you go on every road. So if you, especially you guys, you have a 4x4, you got kind of like the overlanding activities. I think for you guys, it's gonna be better to drive your own. But for everybody, we got very lucky. We didn't have a flat tire. We did have a chip in our windshield, but it didn't happen in Alaska, of all places. It happened, I believe, in Colorado on our way to Alaska. So, I mean, we were lucky. And let's go by parts, you know. There are two ways to go up to Alaska. There's the Alcan, the Alaska Highway, which is the main that everybody does. There's the Cassiar. And then once you get up there to the Yukon, there's another two highways, you know, the top of the world and continue on the Alcan. The Alaska Highway, for the most part, I mean, I've seen roads in Indiana a lot worse than the Alaska Highway. So you shouldn't be concerned. And people say, you know, you have to have 3 5-gallon buckets of gas, you know, because gas stations are far in between. Not really. Just fill up whenever it's like half a tank and you'll be fine. So do not be scared of the Alaska Highway. There are many points of interest to stop, you know, like everybody stops at Leard Hot Springs or the Signpost Forest. You know, it's worth a quick stop, not stay 5 days, but it's worth a quick stop. The only part of the Alaska Highway that is really bad is like the last 300 miles.
Okay.
After you pass a lake, beautiful lake, it's called Kluanini Lake, and then comes Destruction Bay. After Destruction Bay, and it's not the washboard or the potholes. It's the frost heaves, because you don't see them coming. You know, the frost heave. If you get one of those frost heaves too far, I mean, your wheels are almost gonna come off the ground. It is, and especially if you're towing, you know, back there, you know, it's still, we lost a few screws here and there. It's an RV. It's gonna happen. But as far as the Alaska Highway, it's for the most part fine. The top of the world, it's kind of like the Destruction Bay part of the Alaska Highway. Frost heaves, washboard, potholes here and there. Usually the gravel parts are the best parts of the road because they withstand better, you know, like the harsh winters. You know, they're easier to maintain in that sense.
You produced a entire series about going to Alaska on your YouTube channel.
Yes.
And you have a section on the road to Alaska, which is its own adventure, and then Alaska itself. And yes. I remember chuckling because one of the first things you said was, you're just going to risk it with the spare tire. And in that you were going to bring an air compressor and a good tire repair kit. Yeah. So it sounds like that worked out for you. And if you were to plan the trip again in an RV, would you go the same route or would you carry a spare next time?
Like a second spare? Probably not. Probably not. I think I would risk it. I mean, it's I mean, there is one road that I already did that I probably won't do again because you know it's and that was where we had the most trouble with. That's the Dalton Highway. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's the northernmost road in the United States, the most remote, 240 miles without services. I mean, you after that town, Coldfoot, you know, which is like the halfway point, you're pretty much on your own. You know, you better have a way. You know, there's no emergency services. There's no gas stations. Nothing, and that road is mostly pretty bad gravel, and the paved parts aren't very good either. So that's the one road where I would take more precautions, if you will. The rest of Alaska, I mean, some of it feels like really remote and the frontier. But the farther south you go, the more it's actually the way I describe it to myself. There are 3 Alaskas. There are three main areas of Alaska, and the first one is Fairbanks. You know, it's the town in the middle of the state, and north of there, you know, it's and the surrounding area. That's what I called, you know, the last frontier, the wild Alaska. You know, it feels rough. You know, automobiles, cars, they have a power plug in the front because you have to plug them in when you park them in the winter because it is so cold that you won't be able to start them again. So it's that kind of, you know, minus 40 degrees in winter, rough. Then you have the southern part of Alaska, which is like the Kenai Peninsula. You know, that's the touristy part of Alaska. It's where all the, you know, where the Princess Cruise goes and all the, you know, where all the cruises go, and it's like, and you see them, you see up and down the Parks Highway, you know, the buses from all the cruise lines and even the Alaska Railroad, they have cars, you know, they may be like 3 cars from Alaska Railroad, but then you have 2 Princess cars, 2 Holland America cars, and it's so touristy. And then there's Anchorage, the largest city. And as an Alaskan friend put it to me, it's you can see Alaska from there, but it's not Alaska. You arrive there and there's Chick-fil-A and even Raising Cane's and all the chain restaurants and everything. It's like you might as well be in Des Moines. You're arriving in Anchorage and you are arriving in any suburb of any large American city. So those are the three Alaskas.
Just talking about getting up there, a lot of the people that we've heard will say that Alaska is great, but what's even better is the portion of Canada that you have to drive through. Did you stop in Canada at all, or did you just kind of bomb through it?
Well, yeah, of course you have to do, especially if you're going to take the Alcan, which is a little farther east. The Canadian Rockies are a must, I think. And I think we kind of rushed through them because it was such a long road to Alaska that we wanted to get there, so we didn't spend enough time. But, the Banff area, Lake Louise, Jasper, that deserves at least a week, if not more, with all the hiking, all these lakes. They have this turquoise water that doesn't seem possible. It seems like someone just dropped a bucket of turquoise dye to that lake. So and the mountains, and it's a beautiful area. Same with the western part. If you come down like we did, we returned on the Cassiar, on the Stuart Cassiar. There's so many beautiful places in that area, and of course there's the area surrounding Vancouver, which is also beautiful.
Do you mind walking through kind of your timeline for your Alaska trip this year? Because I think you left Florida towards the end of May. Is that correct?
Yes. It's May 23rd or 24th, I believe we left. And we pretty much made a beeline for the Rockies. So I wanted to take some time to spend a little time in Colorado, and we did Yellowstone again. We did the eastern part of Glacier National Park, which was closed in 2020 when I was there. And we took our time, and then we took our time in a little bit of time in Canada. We visited. I'm a Trekkie, so I had to visit Vulcan, Alberta, of course, which the whole town is like a Star Trek theme thing. They have all those things. And then Calgary, which I was pleasantly surprised to. Well, what a great city! It's super diverse and bustling. And then we did the Canadian Rockies, which I already talked about. And then you have to keep going north to a town called Dawson Creek. Not the TV series, but Dawson Creek. And that's the beginning of the Alaska Highway. So that's one of the main stops that you have to do. From Dawson City, the first day drive is not the most scenic, to be honest. And the one thing this year in Canada, we had wildfires. So it was a lot of smoke. So it wasn't very scenic. But once you get to the mountains, and I'm right now the name escapes me. It's called Summit Lake. It's a great campground there, and I should have a map in front of me because right before Summit Lake, there's a town that has the best cinnamon roll on the Alaska Highway. They claim it, and it was really good. They have a small RV park there too, but we decided to boondock at this Summit Lake, which is beautiful. It's part of it is called Stone Mountain Provincial Park. Nothing to do with the one in Georgia or the one in North Carolina. It's called Stone Mountain, and it's beautiful there. And that's the beginning of the beautiful part of the Alaska Highway. From there are a few must stops. One of them is the Liard River Hot Springs, which that's something that a lot of people do. It's not like you're gonna stay there for a long time, but it's a nice hot spring if you're into that. They have waterfalls, and they have you can either stay at the state park or provincial parks, they're called in Canada. But if you want full hookups on Starlink, you can stay at the RV park across the street, which is like, I don't know, $40, $45 a night. And they have no trees. So for us, by the way, Starlink was a game changer when it came to this trip, because there's no cell phone signal pretty much throughout the whole road.
I saw the episode where you stopped at the hot spring, and I remember you were exploring one of the little creeks, and then you decided to turn around, and I was getting a little nervous watching you kind of explore down this little creek. I was like, where is this gonna go? I hope he doesn't get attacked.
That was a little bit scary. I was wearing a water shoes and all that, but it gets narrower and narrower, and you start seeing bugs, and I'm like, maybe I should return. Although the floor is all gravel, I suspect some of it is man-made these days. So yeah, Liard River, very very cool to visit. Just one night. We got there like at 4 p.m. I jumped in the springs, and then on the next day continued. And as I said, every I want to say 100 kilometers or so, there's a gas station, and all of them, or most of them, they're like little towns. You have a gas station, an RV park, a convenience store, and a small lodge, and it's all concentrated there. So if we were every 100 miles or so, you're gonna have one of those, which very convenient. The next stop is Watson Lake. Watson Lake. It's kind of in the border. It's in the Yukon, but you're gonna straddle the Yukon British Columbia border there for a few miles, and Watson Lake is mainly famous for the signpost forest. Signpost forest. This started during World War II. The two lonely soldiers. They were building the Alaska Highway, and they posted a sign with the distance to their hometown. And then people started doing that, and now there are thousands of, if not tens of thousands of signs there. And I know every other YouTuber has put their sign there at some point. So I had to do that too, But mostly, signs like road signs from all over the world, and that was something to see. Again, stay one night at the RV park, or you can boondock. There's boondock, the other thing, except the Yukon. The Yukon is a little more strict when it comes to boondocking, but you can pull off pretty much in any rest area, any pull out, and nobody cares. And in Alaska, even less. And the next big stop is Whitehorse, which is the capital of the Yukon Territory, and there they have it's an old river boat. There's several things to do there. There's a museum. There's another hot spring, and it's a very developed city for how far north it is. It almost felt Nordic, like kind of like these square buildings, but very very well maintained. And after that, that's when it starts to get a little sketchy. You're gonna go west. There's this town called Haines Junction, which is the first junction where you can go to somewhere in Alaska. There's a couple of towns on the Alaska Panhandle that are not accessible from the rest of Alaska, so you can only access them through Canada, and that's Haines Junction. And then after that, Kluane Lake, Destruction Bay, that's when it gets a little sketchy. And just take it slow, and eventually you're gonna encounter the border. But I didn't talk about the border crossings. But the border crossing into Canada was relatively easy. They grill you with a bunch of questions, like if you have mainly firearms. For some reason, they care about firearms, drugs, and liquor. And as long as you don't have any of those, you're fine. And then going back into the United States is most like a customs, you have to declare if you have eggs, and eggs seems to be a problem, certain things, and it's hard to find like super accurate information about what you can bring or you cannot. It changes. Now the problem with eggs is avian flu, but in the future it could be something else, And the first town that you're going to encounter in Alaska is Tok. It's a small town called Tok. But that's where it begins, that's where, as soon as you get to Alaska, you start seeing these snow-capped mountains. There are mountains everywhere, and there are beautiful lakes everywhere, and waterfalls and rivers and all that. But in Alaska, it's just like the concentration of them is just like, it's a lot more. It's the largest state, but there is so much. And I'm rambling here a little bit, but I wanted to get this point across. The main thing is that your geographical location, being so far north, even mountains that are not as tall, they keep the snow on the top, year round. And then if you don't look at it on a map, look at it on a globe, exactly where you are like on the top of the world, literally. You can point to it, and then it never gets dark. that time of the year. We arrived in Alaska. I wanted to time it, so we did Fairbanks for the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. And they have something, on the Saturday closest to that date. It's called the Midnight Sun Festival. Fairbanks, by the way, is the second largest city, and is the end of the Alaska Highway is really a small town called Delta Junction, but there's not a whole lot to do there. So you get there, take a picture with the sign, and keep going to Fairbanks, large city. There's a lot of things to do in the vicinity of Fairbanks, and it's a fairly large city. You can still tell you're in the frontier, but it's everything. They have everything. Now the Midnight Sun Festival, it's a cultural experience. It's like any carnival. Anywhere, any festival. They have vendors and music and all that. But they have on the solstice. They have that we didn't do. At the end, we decided not to go. They have a baseball game that begins at 10 p.m. and they don't have lights. They don't use the lights. It finishes at midnight or 1 a.m. And the thing is, with daylight savings time and the way Alaska is positioned in the time zone, the true midnight really happens like at 1:30 a.m. So that's when the sun is going to be the lowest. And yeah, you do get the sun does set like at 12:30, and then it comes back up like at 2 a.m. But it never gets dark.
I was going to say, I remember watching a video with Gone with the Winds, where they were up in Alaska and they did it was like a 5K or something at midnight. You remember that? Yeah,
they do that too. I think they do it on the same day as the baseball game, but I'm not certain. I'm not certain about that. Yeah, that's something that actually we could have done, but we wanted to do other things. We went to in Fairbanks. It's a day trip to Chena Hot Springs, which is a nice area. Actually, the highlight for us was not the hot springs, but they have an ice museum with an ice bar. And they carve a martini glass out of ice, and they carve it in front of you, and then they give you an apple tini at the end of the tour. Probably 25 degrees in there. I don't know how long. And they have these ice sculptures that some of them are 30-year-old sculptures. They've been there, they keep them frozen even in winter. That was a cool place.
Did you freeze your martini glass so you can take it home?
The tradition is for you to smash it on the ground on your way out. So that's what we did, yeah. From there, you can go two ways. You can go north, as I mentioned earlier, on the Dalton Highway, which is actually when you realize that you're really in the Arctic, because you go past the Arctic Circle. And once you go past the Arctic Circle, and you have to wake up in the middle of the night to experience this. If you have a clear day, go experience the midnight sun, the real thing. It's and that was very emotional for me. I had one pretty much for many years. I had wanted to experience this, and I have heard this. There's this mountain. It's called Gobbler's Knob. That it's about, I want to say, 20-minute drive from the Arctic Circle going north. And from there, during these dates, in late June, the sun doesn't set. You see it kind of coming down from the west where it would, and then when it hits dead north, it's like 5 degrees over the horizon, and then it starts going back up, after the astronomical midnight, and that was quite an experience. Besides the mosquitoes.
Yeah, I want to hear about the mosquitoes.
Especially in this northern part of Alaska. And not only there, in the Yukon and Canada too. I mean, mosquitoes are crazy. I mean, they swarm you. If you're moving, not quite as much, but if you stop like I did, like to take a picture of the midnight sun, as you do, they're just flying all over you. They don't bite as much. If you've been to Florida, our mosquitoes here in Florida, they land on you and they bite you immediately. These mosquitoes in Alaska, they're kind of lazy, like lethargic, There are a lot of them, but they land on you and they're like, should I bite him? Should I not? And eventually they do, but just work bug spray. And I had one of those nets, for like the worst of the worst days. Like when I had to, go grab the generator to get some power and all that, So, yeah, we did that. And then, of course, that the Dalton Highway takes you all the way to just before the Arctic. It's the most remote road. First you go through boreal forest. Then after you pass the Brooks Mountains range, you go. It's the North Slope, but it's tundra. Nothing grows. No large trees will grow that far north. And eventually you get to a town called Dead Horse, which is kind of anticlimactic because it's all industrial facilities for the oil companies, oil wells, and it's not the most attractive place. From there you can take a tour. And you have to take a tour if you want to see the Arctic Ocean. And you are, 10 miles away? You might as well go the extra, not even 10 miles away. And it's not expensive. You get it there at Dead Horse Camp. And they kind of give you a tour of the oil facilities. And then at the end, you get to, if you feel so inclined, you can take the polar bear plunge, as it's called. I just waited in the Arctic. I didn't go all the way. I chickened out. But
did you plan to?
I wanted to, but I'm like, it's too cold. I'm from the Caribbean. It's kind of like, is it worth it? In hindsight, it was probably a missed opportunity, but I probably should have done it. I mean, I could talk a whole hour about the Dalton Highway. It was the most intense adventure of the whole trip for sure. We had one mishap, a rookie mistake on my part. We left the water pump on the road, and it's so bumpy. This is like the least maintained road there in Alaska, that our faucet opened by itself. The faucet in the kitchen sink, and we lost like half a tank, and we filled up like half of our gray water. So we had to make a beeline back because we were at the limit of our boondocking capabilities there, and supposedly there was supposed to be a dump station at Dead Horse, but both the milepost and the BLM guide were wrong. It's no longer open. So yeah, we kind of on the way back we kind of hightailed it back to Fairbanks.
For people that are going up to Alaska, what resources would you recommend they get or have on hand?
Well, everybody recommended to me the milepost, and I may be the oddball here. I opened it twice, and because twice it had outdated information. So I mean, if you have a co-pilot that is going to go, mile by mile, and tell you there's something, or if you have a lot of time to plan, and you can go mile by mile and see what point of interest there are. Otherwise, I mean, we were spoiled. We have Starlink in motion, so we had internet like even in the most remote corners of Alaska, as long as there were no trees. So we used Google instead, to find our way. But if you don't, the milepost it could be a great resource.
It sounds like Starlink was one of the most essential resources for you on this trip.
It was a game changer because my wife Ili, she's working from the road, so she was able to work from anywhere, even in the middle of nowhere, Dalton Highway, where there's nothing else. It's there's not a soul for 200 miles probably on that North Slope, except the people that are on the road.
Do you mind sharing what your Starlink plan was and how much you were paying?
Way too much. So the standard plan is $150, right? But that one doesn't include emotion. So you have to get the standard. Is it still called roaming, or now it's called something else? Roaming priority. Even though I went through my priority gigabytes in less than a day, but the priority allows you to use it in motion, which works remarkably well, for something that is talking to satellites going high speeds, in the sky, and you're also going in a different direction. I mean, it worked really well. So it was $250 a month, what we paid during our time out there, just so we could use it in motion. And I understand that's something that not everybody will need. But in our case, we thought it was worth it.
And it sounds like, especially since the book you were referencing had outdated information, being able to access the internet when you're in the middle of nowhere to find out where, let's say, the next gas station is or the next water fill is essential.
Yeah. To be fair to the milepost, probably the online information about some of these places was also going to be outdated. Like there's an old wooden bridge near Dawson City, that Dawson Creek, that was no longer open, and well, that dump station that even the online BLM guide still marked it as available. So
going back to the timing of your trip, it sounds like it took you about a month to get to Alaska. And then how long did you all stay in Alaska to explore?
We spent almost 6 weeks in Alaska, and we've barely scratched the surface here. As the Dalton Highway was like the beginning of our trip. After that, we went down to Denali National Park. Of course, that's like the most visited point of interest in Alaska. And then we went down to the Kenai Peninsula. We spent I want to say 3 weeks in the Kenai Peninsula. That's what I call the touristy part of Alaska, and there are so many places where you can take cruises, or we took. Let's start with Denali. I have to organize my thoughts here. You guys help me out if you want. But from Fairbanks to Denali is just a couple-hour drive. It's very close, and Denali National Park, of course. If you want to enjoy the park, you have to take either a tour or one of the shuttle buses, because you can only drive the first 13 miles. That's the only part of the park you are allowed to drive with your own vehicle, and you don't even get to see Denali on those 13 miles unless you hike to the top of a mountain. So do that. There's a town right across the road from the entrance to the park. They have RV parks and all kinds of businesses, even a very cool saloon at the Princess Hotel. It's very nice, and you can camp in the park too. They have several campgrounds, but I decided to reserve the full hookups campground outside the park. It seemed more comfortable, and so many hiking trails and so much to do.
How far in advance did you book some of these campground reservations and experiences? Because the way Joe and I like to travel, we like to wing it. And we rarely ever book anything in advance, but I don't know if that's possible if we're planning an RV trip to Alaska.
Actually, it is the coolest experience that we ever did in Alaska, which was, Brooks Falls, to see the bears eating salmon there, catching the salmon on the river. I couldn't make a reservation. I went with the most, famous company, reputable or not, and they have booking, but then it's all weight limited. If they ask you how much you weigh, and it's a small float plane, so they couldn't. They said they didn't have anything, so I kind of had given up. And last minute, Ili, she went online and Viator of all places, and lo and behold, there was room in one of the tours. They have 10 companies that do the same or more. I don't know how many companies they have. They all charge the same. They all do basically the same tour. They take you on a float plane to Katmai National Park, which is a beautiful flight. I mean, it's one of those bucket list. You're gonna remember it forever. And then that platform where you see the bears, it's eating salmon, and it seems so close. Seeing nature, the circle of life happening before your eyes, so close. It's something that you definitely want to do. Of course, yeah, it comes at a price. And I'm gonna say it is $1,000 per person. That tour. Yeah,
that is. I will say, out of all the things I've seen in Alaska, that is definitely on my bucket list.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to pay for it. I mean, I would venture to guess you paid a lot more in fuel to get to Alaska.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that was not the only tour we did, but it was definitely the most expensive one. I would definitely take one of the cruises, the day cruises that they do. They all last around 6 hours, more or less. And one of them we took from Seward, which is also a very touristy town, but beautiful. Even though the weather did not cooperate, they take you on Resurrection Bay there, and Kenai Fjords National Park, and you get to see glaciers, and you get to see the glacier cabin, which is something sometimes you don't get to see it, but when you get to see it, it's really cool, and because you don't know when it's going to happen, so you have to keep your eyes peeled on the glacier, and by the time you hear the noise, it already happened, because sound takes a while for it to travel. So But we did get to see some glacier calving. We saw humpback whales. We saw, I mean, the most beautiful waterfalls. Even though it was raining the whole time, but we still got to enjoy it. And there are two more tours that one that we didn't take because we figured, we already taken two glacier viewing tours. So there's a tour from Whittier, Whittier is a peculiar town. All this is in the Kenai Peninsula, because to get to it, you have to go through a tunnel, and this very narrow tunnel. It's one way, only one lane tunnel, and it's shared with a railroad. So it goes. It's on a schedule. Like going eastbound is on the half hour, going westbound is on the top of the hour, and then if the train happens to be coming, you have to wait, right? But it's a very much a white knuckle drive because you're driving on top of the rail of the rail, and your vehicle kind of. And my new truck has that lane departure assist or lane keep assist, and it kept getting confused. And the truck was trying to steer me a different way, and I'm going like 20 miles an hour on this tunnel, and it's 2 miles, but it felt like an eternity. Now Whittier is this town that most of the town lives in this big, like 15-story building. And that building has like everything in there, hospital, stores, facilities. They don't really have to get out of there in winter if they don't want to. But they have a cruise. It's the 26 Glacier Cruise. If you're ever in Alaska, this is the most beautiful, and the weather also was great. But you see all these glaciers. One of the largest ones, I forget, I think it's a mile wide and like... I want to say 500 feet tall. It's called the area is called College Fjord, and all the glaciers are named after famous universities. This one happens to be Harvard Glacier, and then there's another. Actually, the most beautiful one was at the end of the trip, at the end of this cruise, and I'm trying to look it up here on the map and I can't find it, but I will. And that is Blackstone Glacier. Blackstone Glacier, it's beautiful as it is because it's like at the end of a canyon. But then there's this huge waterfall on the right-hand side. And that's probably the most scenic thing. I mean, the most, like, you're like, okay, it was worth it. So same with the previous cruise, the one in Resurrection Bay, the humpback whales. When we saw the humpback whales, I'm like, yeah, this was worth it. And this is one of those things that it's only in Alaska, and makes the whole effort of spending 3 months on the road and making it there, like, yep, this is what it's all about.
With the Whittier Glacier cruise, was that just a day cruise?
Yeah, that's just a day cruise. It departs in the morning. And they give you a meal, which is nothing out of this world, but it's a meal. And after you reach the glacier, there's all this ice on the sea, and they get some of that ice, and then they give you. I mean, you have to buy it, of course, but they give you cocktails with glacial ice.
I'm in. I want an old-fashioned with glacial ice.
That's exactly what I had. Yeah.
There you go.
Going back to the reservations piece, how many of the campgrounds did you reserve way in advance? And do you feel like you needed to do that? Could you have just pulled into a random campground and gotten a site?
Way in advance, we're talking 2 weeks. I mean, we didn't really reserve anything way in advance. And I totally went on a tangent when you asked me that earlier. I went on the tours instead of the campgrounds. And the good thing in Alaska is you can boondock pretty much everywhere. Everywhere. They have plenty of pullouts. And I mean, we stayed at campgrounds because we're power hogs and we wanted to charge the batteries and we wanted to take a long shower. And at places like, for example, we spent a whole week in Anchorage, which for us, that's a lot. If people who know me, I'm like 2-3 days and we keep going. And we spent a whole week in Anchorage, a whole week in Fairbanks. So those we reserved, and the one in Fairbanks was the one a little sketchy because it was during the Midnight Sun Festival, and that one we reserved in advance, and still we got like the overflow sites. They were still full hookup, but they're like by the front in the back of a gas station, not the best sites. You don't really have to make the reservations unless, for example, in Seward, the Seward Municipal Campground, you can get a site waterfront. If you want that waterfront site, they're dry camping, but they're waterfront. So you may want that one. That one you may want to reserve in advance. By the time I reserved Seward, which was like a week before, they didn't have those. But for the most part, and if you don't want to stay at the campground in Seward, there's boondocking, like 5 miles away from downtown or whatever. It's everywhere.
Round trip from Florida, Alaska, and back was, would you say, roughly 3 months? Could you talk about like budgeting for someone who wants to do a trip to Alaska from that part of the country? Like, what's a rough budget they should plan for?
I don't know exactly how much we spent, to be honest about it. I'm like, we're going to Alaska. You got to do it. We're going to drive 5,000 miles one way, whatever it takes. We'll figure it out later. So when I do my taxes this year, I can let you know how much we spent. And I kind of don't want to know. I mean, you have to have the $90 pizza. Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Wait, is that for a whole pizza or a slice of pizza?
No, that was the whole pizza. This is a funny story. This was at the village in front of Denali National Park. Actually, we sat at the bar there. There's it's the pizza place there. I forget the name. It escapes me right now. And right next to us sits. They happen to be viewers of my YouTube channel, so we started chatting and this and that. And they had a king crab pizza. For market price, of course. They don't tell you the price. It's like, if you have to ask, you can't afford it, right? So I'd like to have the king crab pizza. And the bartender told me, it's $90, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to say no, in front of, like, and I still wanted to do it, I was peer pressured into doing it, kind of. And it was the most delicious thing I've ever had, that crab. And later we found out we had a whole pound of king crab, $90. Well, when we went down to Homer, which is another place that we haven't talked about much, a pound of king crab was $120. So I guess that was the cheapest pound of king crab in Alaska at $90. So it worked out.
Yeah, I have a friend who works on all of those Alaska TV shows and has spent a lot of time in the winter and summer going through Alaska. But he was telling us, if you want the freshest, best king crab, it's in Homer.
He did say that. Now, did you try the king crab in Homer?
No, we didn't. I said, one is enough. In Homer, we tried halibut, of course. Is the halibut fishing capital of Alaska. And Homer is a very cool town. I mean, for the most part, it's the Spit, is this peninsula that goes into the water that almost looks like artificial, like man-made, but they claim it's natural, and that's where all the restaurants, most of the restaurants, and all that is. And that, of course, is the gateway to the floatplane ride to see the bears eating salmon. So. And they have all kinds of, you can go on fishing cruises, and we're not really into fishing all that much. I mean, I've done it twice in my life, so we didn't do that, but they have all kinds of cruises from there too, and activities and experiences. And since we are already in that area, Kenai Peninsula, the most perhaps authentic experience we had, like of Alaskan culture, we happened to be in this small town called Kenai during the salmon run, and there's the Kenai River there, and it's like you have to be a resident of Alaska to be able to do this. Thousands of people dip net fishing. They have these big round nets, and they just dip them in the river, and at some point the salmon is going to get trapped in there. And seeing all the people doing that, and even the people who have boats, I can't believe they weren't crashing against each other, because it was like a fishing frenzy out there. Hundreds of boats on the mouth of the river there, and that was quite the experience.
That sounds like fun. So you basically had a giant net that you put into the water.
Yeah.
And then just waited essentially for a salmon to jump in it, and then you would bring it up.
Just you go on the beach. There's a beach there, and there's like literally thousands of people. And during that time of the year, they let them camp on the beach on both sides of the river and other rivers in the area as well. And yeah, it's like think of it as like a huge lollipop, right? It's a round net with a long stick, and then you carry it and you stick it in the water, and yeah.
Did you get to stick it in the water, or was this
No, I didn't.
Alaskans
I didn't
only?
get to do it. Maybe if I had an Alaskan friend, but it's an activity. In the past, it was anybody could do it, but nowadays you have to be an Alaska resident to be able to do it legally.
What was your number one thing you saw or did in Alaska that really stood out?
Well, besides Brooks Falls and the bears eating the salmon, well, we're part of the 30% club. We got to see Denali. But I'm trying to think here. It's hard to pick one experience, if you know what I mean. But I would say probably the most unique was the Kite National Park, Brooks Falls, and the bears eating salmon, and the whole experience, the float plane ride on itself. I mean, we were packed like sardines in that plane. It wasn't comfortable, but the views out the window were spectacular.
For anyone who hasn't watched it yet, they need to check out your YouTube series on Alaska, because just watching it gets me so excited about going to Alaska in an RV. Because we keep going kind of back and forth on, well, do we want to RV there first, or should we maybe fly in, tour around a little bit, and decide?
Yeah, we've actually been talking about this year, because we have a lot going on, is taking one of the cruises up, do the cruise, maybe a couple excursions, or just stay up there for a while and then fly home, and then just get a feel for it, and then be able to take our RV back when we don't have any other things going on. We don't have to rush it, and we can just take our time.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the thing. It is a commitment. You have to budget like your whole summer. It's not like you're driving even cross country. It's you have to take your time. And we spent 6 weeks in Alaska, and there's so many things that we didn't get to do. And for example, as you probably know, I broke my ankle in Quartzsite last year. So I wasn't still 100% like to do longer hikes and all that. So there are many hikes that I didn't get to do, and there are many things that, in hindsight, all the research in the world that you can do, there's still things that you miss. Like little towns here and there that I would have liked to visit, and we didn't. The one thing we haven't mentioned, it's the northernmost point in the United States. And we had to fly there because there are no roads. And that's the one thing. It's up until 2 or 3 years ago, it was called Barrow, Alaska. And now it's the Inupiat name, Utqiagvik, which doesn't really roll off the tongue, and pretty much everybody, even the Alaska Airlines, still calls it Barrow. So, but there's one daily flight from Anchorage to Barrow, and if you wanna just to say that you were at the northernmost point there by the Arctic Ocean, it's worth 24 hours of your time. They have a pretty good hotel with ocean views, and but there's really not a whole lot to do there except, do that. And there's a museum that was closed when we were there, but it's something else to do.
Now, during the time that you were there, is that a popular time to see the Northern Lights? Because I know
Nope.
that's seasonal. Okay.
Nope. The thing with the Northern Lights, they're up there. But since it doesn't get dark, you can't see them. So you have to wait until later in the season. Had we stayed into late August, September, maybe we would have been able to see the Northern Lights. But yeah, we had to get back for some other reasons, so sooner than we wanted to. So.
All right, I'm sold.
You're in?
But
All right.
I am thinking, and this is my crazy mind thinking here, I've been thinking it for a couple of months, to fly to Anchorage in late February and take the train to Fairbanks, and maybe I'll be able to see the Northern Lights. Like a 2-week winter trip, just fly up there and like a conclusion to our trip, if we will.
I like that idea because now the first time you all went to Alaska in 2010, you flew there because you didn't take an RV. Okay.
No, in 2010, and we were already thinking about RVing back in 2010, and we did the Dalton Highway back then too. But we flew to Fairbanks, and we spent most of the time in Fairbanks. And it was just like a week, like to get a taste of the midnight sun. And not every rental company will let you go on there are 3 highways that they don't let you take a rental vehicle. That's the Dalton, the Denali Highway, which is another highway we haven't talked about, and one that is called the McCarthy Highway that goes into a town called McCarthy, which is in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park. But there's a couple of outfitters in Fairbanks that will rent you. And at the time, it was a Ford Escape, 4-wheel drive. They back in the day, they gave it to us with a CB radio because that's what everybody uses to communicate on the Dalton still to this day. Not everybody has Starlink, and an extra spare tire. So. And they send you on your way.
Well, the one thing we need to get for our van is a spare tire because we don't have one. We have
not even one.
No, not even one.
Oh.
So we have a air compressor. We have a very well complemented tire repair kit, but no spare tire. So that's going to be on our list.
The thing with those roads is you're not going to get a nail, which is easy to remove and plug. It's probably going to be a big, sharp rock that is going to pierce through your tire, and that tire is gone. It's not repairable. That's the problem with those dirt roads up there.
Well, I think we've taken a lot of your time and really appreciate you kind of scratching the surface for us of Alaska. And I can't wait to get through the rest of your Alaska series on YouTube. But before we let you go, there is a question that we are asking all of our guests, and that is, what is one thing you wish you knew before you started RVing?
Oh man, this has changed over the years. I wish there was an Expedia for RVing, like a universal booking system. It's sometimes you end up, in my case, sometimes I just end up going to campgrounds that have an online booking system, just to not having to wait for a call back. And that's something that I thought, I was never a camper. I jumped into this lifestyle as an RVer. I thought it would be like hotels, 24/7 desk, reception desk, and this and that. And I realized that it's more of a, having to, especially mom and pop campgrounds. You have to call, make a reservation, and this and that, and I didn't know there were so many options besides. Campgrounds, we have Harvest Hosts and now Hip Camp. There's so many different ways that you can stay out there. So
yeah, I don't know how many times we've been in towns where we think we're going to boondock, and then we realize there's no place for us to boondock, or they're all the spots are taken, and then we're driving around looking for a campground, and all the campgrounds are closed. So you can't go in and get a spot. And we've gotten lucky a couple times where we've popped in and they've closed and they're walking out. We come in and say, "Hey, do you have a spot? Can we just park here for the night?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you have a camper van. For you guys, it's easier too,
Yes, it's much easier. I mean, we can fit in a standard parking spot.
Now, before we let you go, for people who want to find you and check out your Alaska series, how can they find all of your content?
Just go to my YouTube channel, Traveling Robert. I have an Alaska playlist. And I'm pretty much everywhere, all the social networks. Just look for Traveling Robert, at Traveling Robert, all one word, American spelling with one L, and that's it.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and it was great having you on the show.
No, thank you, Joe and Kait. It's been my pleasure being able to chat with you guys again.
Well, and you've inspired us to get up to Alaska. So
yeah, you gotta do it. You guys gotta do it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you'd like any of the resources that were mentioned in today's episode, check out the show notes or head over to our website at we'retherussos.com. We have a lot of RVing resources out there, especially of all the other states that we've been to, since Alaska is the one we haven't gone to yet. But there are resources for the new RVer as well as the experienced RVer, and you'll find links to my 2 books, Take Risks and Tales from the Open Road. Thank you so much for watching or listening today, and if you haven't, please subscribe or follow us from whatever platform you're watching or listening to. We'll see you next time. Bye.